The night began like any other audition night, bright lights flooding the Ireland's Got Talent stage, the audience buzzing with polite curiosity, judges casually flipping through their notes, already deciding in their minds who would pass and who would fade away. Hundreds of performers had already walked across that stage this season, each carrying dreams that either sparkled or shattered under the spotlight. Nobody knew that in the shadows backstage, a boy who once slept on sidewalks halfway across the world was about to deliver a performance that would leave the entire room stunned into silence. His name was Miguel Santos, a 15-year-old street kid from Cebu in the Philippines. He stood quietly behind the curtain, clutching a borrowed jacket that was slightly too big for his thin frame. His shoes were worn out, the soles nearly smooth from years of walking on concrete roads instead of school hallways. He had never owned a microphone before today. He had never flown on a plane until 3 days ago. And he had never imagined that his voice, once used only to sing for spare coins outside crowded markets, would be heard by millions across the world. Miguel's story did not begin on a stage. It began on a narrow street in Cebu where the smell of fried food mixed with dust and exhaust fumes. His mother used to hum old songs while washing clothes for neighbors, and his father played Elvis Presley tapes on a broken cassette player he found in a junk shop. When Miguel was 8 years old, his father passed away suddenly, leaving behind nothing but that cassette player and a handful of songs that became Miguel's escape. Soon after, his mother fell ill, and Miguel found himself sleeping outdoors, singing to survive, singing to forget hunger, singing to feel less alone. He learned English not from schoolbooks but from listening carefully to tourists, copying the way they spoke, the way they reacted when his voice echoed down the street. When he sang Elvis songs, people stopped. Some smiled. Some cried. Some stayed longer than they planned. For Miguel, Elvis wasn't just music. Elvis was strength. Elvis was confidence. Elvis was the voice he borrowed when the world felt too heavy for a kid his age. Back in Ireland, the host called his name, and Miguel stepped onto the stage. The crowd gave a polite clap, the kind reserved for contestants no one expects much from. The judges glanced up, mildly curious. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, prepared for another predictable audition. One judge asked Miguel where he was from, and when he answered softly, Cebu, Philippines, a ripple of surprise passed through the audience. When asked why he came all this way, Miguel paused. He didn't launch into a dramatic speech. He simply said he came to sing because singing saved his life. The room shifted. Something about his calm honesty cut through the noise. Simon raised an eyebrow, not impressed yet, but listening. The music began. Just a simple backing track, nothing flashy. Miguel closed his eyes for half a second, not out of fear, but memory. And then he sang. The first note hit the room like electricity. It wasn't loud. It wasn't forced. It was controlled, rich, and impossibly mature for someone so young. The audience leaned forward instinctively. A few people exchanged confused looks, as if trying to locate where that voice was really coming from. By the time Miguel reached the second line, whispers spread through the crowd. This was not a street singer trying his luck. This was something else entirely. Simon Cowell stopped moving. His smile disappeared. His posture changed. His eyes locked onto the stage as if afraid to blink. One judge's jaw slowly dropped open. Another judge placed a hand over their mouth. The audience grew silent, not because they were told to, but because nobody wanted to interrupt what felt like a once-in-a-lifetime moment. Then came the first twist. Halfway through the performance, the backing track suddenly cut out. Gasps filled the room. This was the kind of mistake that destroyed auditions. The kind that made singers panic, lose pitch, lose rhythm, lose everything. Miguel opened his eyes and realized what had happened. For a split second, the old fear returned. The streets. The noise. The moments when his voice was all he had. And then he did something no one expected. He kept singing. No music. No safety net. Just raw voice filling the theater. His tone didn't waver. His confidence didn't crack. Instead, the performance became even more powerful. You could hear every breath, every emotion, every ounce of life experience poured into each note. The audience erupted into spontaneous applause mid-song, clapping in rhythm, lifting him instead of distracting him. Simon leaned forward now, elbows on knees, completely frozen in disbelief. The music came back in, but by then, Miguel didn't need it. He owned the stage. He owned the moment. And when he finished the final note, the silence lasted just long enough to feel unreal. Then the room exploded. The audience jumped to their feet. Cheers thundered through the theater. People screamed. People cried. Judges stood up, applauding harder than anyone else. Simon Cowell remained standing, hands clasped, shaking his head slowly, as if trying to process what he had just witnessed. When the applause finally faded, Simon was the first to speak. He didn't crack a joke. He didn't criticize. He didn't offer technical feedback. He simply said that in all his years of judging talent around the world, moments like this were rare, and voices like Miguel's were once in a generation. The shock on his face said more than his words ever could. Then came the second twist. One of the judges asked Miguel how he managed to come to Ireland. Miguel explained that a small community group in Cebu had filmed him singing on the streets and shared the video online. The video went viral quietly, passed from phone to phone, until someone connected to the show saw it and offered him a chance. But there was a condition. If he failed the audition, he would have to return home immediately. No second chances. The weight of that revelation hit the room hard. This wasn't just a performance. This was a turning point. This was everything on the line. Simon stood again and announced something no one expected. He said that regardless of what happened next in the competition, Miguel would not be going back to the streets unnoticed. The audience roared. The judges unanimously voted yes, sending Miguel straight through to the next round. Miguel tried to speak, but his voice broke. Tears rolled down his face as he bowed awkwardly, overwhelmed, unsure how to process the reality that his life had just changed forever. Backstage, crew members hugged him. Contestants who had once seen him as competition now saw him as inspiration. Social media exploded within minutes. Clips of the audition spread across the United States, Ireland, the Philippines, and beyond. Headlines read: Street Kid from Cebu stuns Simon Cowell. Elvis lives through a new voice. A star is born where no one looked. But the story didn't end there. In the following rounds, Miguel faced challenges he had never experienced. Vocal coaches pushed him. Stylists tried to change his look. Critics questioned whether his success was based on talent or sympathy. For the first time, doubt crept in from the outside world. Then came the semifinal. Miguel chose to honor Elvis again, but this time with a twist. He blended the classic style with subtle influences from his own culture. Something no one expected. Some judges were unsure. The audience held its breath. When he finished, the reaction was mixed. This was the hardest moment yet. Results night arrived, and Miguel stood on stage with his head lowered. When his name was called as a finalist, he dropped to his knees, overwhelmed not by victory, but by validation. The final performance was the strongest of his life. He sang not as a street kid, not as a contestant, but as an artist who had earned his place. Simon Cowell stood again, clapping before the song even ended. The audience followed. Whether Miguel won the competition or not almost didn't matter anymore. Recording offers came in. Scholarships were offered. His mother received medical care. The streets of Cebu watched on borrowed phones and cried together. Miguel didn't just freeze Simon Cowell in shock. He reminded the world that talent doesn't come from privilege. It comes from survival, passion, and the courage to sing even when everything goes silent.